Wow, I think I'm enjoying these videos more than the sermon, right? We're like, boom, boom. You know, you get all. I was wondering for the rest of the movie. Now I want to go watch it. But today we're going to talk again about our series, Prophets, Lions, and Kings. We already did prophets. We're going to do kings next week. And today we're going to do what? Lions. And you're probably going, oh, my Lord, Dr. Lemma's getting senile. Because, hey, Lemma, you forgot that not too long ago you preached about that same passage. And you talked about the same lions. But remember, that was a different series, right? That one was out of the grave. And we talked about how Daniel went into this situation, which was a living grave, and he came back out of it. So now we're going to look at it from a different perspective. We're going to look at it from a different angle. And so today we're going to be talking about you and the lions that you face, that we all face, and how to survive the potential mauling from them. As a pastor, I get to see the lives of people ripped apart by the lions in their lives. Now, some of them are pretty tough. This week we just had news of a friend that got mauled by a lion, and it was pretty bad. And my wife and I almost cried because of the pain that we can imagine that our friend went through. And we're praying for people that are facing lions, like our friend Edwani that got baptized last week. He's in Houston right now facing the lion of the cancer that's invaded his body, and he's getting treatment there. And we're praying for him. And there's many people that are praying for him. But we need to understand the lions that we're facing, and we need to understand how to deal with them because we're all dealing with them. And so to understand the lions around us, let's begin with the lions that we already know. Now, how many of you remember the movie The Lion King? Yeah, huh? I remember the movie because I had a little girl at that time when the movie came out, and I think I saw the movie 100 times. And so I can tell you the movie backwards, sideways. I can do the backward masking in the movie. I mean, anything. I know the movie backwards and forwards. But one of the things that I liked was the lions that we saw. Remember the lions? Who was the father lion? Mufasa. And what was the little lion? Huh? Simba, right? Simba. And so the neat thing is that Mufasa and Simba had a beautiful relationship. I'll never forget that part. And you've probably heard me already because I love to do this, huh? Is when Simba's trying to figure out who he is, and then Mufasa comes along and says, Simba, remember who you are. All right? But there was another lion in the movie that we really don't talk much about. Remember him? What's his name? Huh? You see him right there? Huh? Who does he look like? Does he look anyone in your family? Scar, okay? Scar. And Scar is the uncle that nobody wants to have, but many of us have. Scar is the guy that's pretending to help you, okay? But he did everything in his power to destroy Simba. And so here's the question for us. How many scars, how many lions like that, how many people like that do you have in your life? I've had several, and I'm sure you have too. And how do you survive? How did you survive? Or some of us, we still have the scars from the mauling that we got from those lions. And so we all meet lions in our path that are extremely dangerous. Now, the good news is that lions can be confronted, right? And not only can they be confronted, but they can be trained as well. When one is aware of the lions and the threat that they pose, then you can subdue the beast. You can subdue the beast. I love circuses, and you probably figured out by now. And one of the things that I love about circus, besides the clowns, is the lions. And then you have the lion tamers. And how do they do it, huh? You have the guy come out, and he looks, really spiffy, and he's got what? A whip. Sometimes they have a little stick, but most of the time they have a whip, and what do? Huh? No, I practice, and this is supposed to work. Anyways, I'm going to be hurt here. I'm going to break a light or something. So listen, okay. So anyways, you know how this works, right? And so you see, like one of my favorites is Siegfried and Roy. And they both passed away not too long ago. And it's amazing to see what these guys did with lions and tigers. But, I mean, they would call them out, and they would stick their heads inside the lion's mouth and do all kinds of things. If you ever have a chance, go to YouTube and watch a show from Siegfried and Roy. It's amazing. It's amazing the things that they do with lions. So you can tame those lions. Now, if you're Samson in the Bible, what did Samson do with the lion? With his bare hands. He killed a lion with his bare hands. Now, there was another guy in the Bible, Benaiah, and you have heard about him because he was the guy that he went into a pit with a stick and killed a lion on a snowy day. Now, that gets pretty hairy, okay? Wow, okay? And so how we deal in lions, we need to know how to defend ourselves from top-tier, lion-like social predators. Okay? And so look at your Bible. Look at the passage that we just read. Actually, we just reread it because we talked about it not too many Sundays ago. And I want you to understand that Daniel is taken because of his religious what? His religious convictions. They said, you can't pray to your God because we got to pray to this one over here. And he said, that's not going to happen. And so they caught him praying to his God. And so they took him in the law of the Medes and the Persians, which could not be changed, demanded that he be brought to justice. And so what did they do to him? They took him into a pit. I don't know. It must have been a hole in, like a cave or something. They threw him up in there. They put a rock over it so that he could not escape, so that the lions could not escape. And then they said, see you in the morning. And the poor king, he was all, bent out of shape. He was worried about his friend Daniel. And so he goes and he fasts and all this. And so then he goes in the morning. He runs out there and he says, Daniel, are you there? And what does Daniel say? Hey, king, here I is. Okay, I'm here. I haven't gone anywhere. And so then we find out the miracle that God sends an angel. And what does the angel do? Huh? Well, we don't know. It says that he closed the mouth of the lions, but I think that he was like talking to Daniel too, kept him company for the night. Hey, Daniel, take a nap. I'll watch for you, this kind of thing. And so at the end of the day, nothing happened to Daniel. He gets out of that pit. Now, here's what I want you to understand. Daniel was 82 years old, we think, more or less in his 80s. How many of you are in your 80s? Yeah, all right. Now. You're laughing because you haven't gotten there yet. Pray you get there. Some of these lions ain't going to let you get there. But what happens is that Daniel was in a pit with real life lions, and they were nothing in comparison to the other lions that he had previously encountered in his life. For you see, at 82 years, he already knew that there were more dangerous lions prowling as people than the ones that he was meeting in that cave. The ones that were responding to their instincts, whereas the other ones were responding to their thoughts and actions against him. And so I want to share with you from a different perspective the dangerous people that Daniel had to deal with that we see in this book that are worse than the lions that he was with in that pit. And let me tell you, sometimes looking at the people that I've had to confront, I'd rather deal with a real lion than deal with one of these people. Because the lions, whatever they do, is going to be better than whatever these guys did. And if you've heard some of the stories that I've heard, I'll take the real lion any day. And so, what did Daniel do to defend himself against dangerous people And it's like, how do you protect yourself against human flesh-eating lions? And I'm not talking about the lions eating human flesh. I'm talking about the human lions eating your flesh. And we've met people like that, and if you have not, you will. How do you defend yourself from social first-tier predators? And they're out there. They're all over. We're going to talk about how we face them every day. And so I want to begin by talking about how Daniel had to find defense against dangerous lions in the wild. Now, dangerous lions exist in the wild. They're out there. They're out there. You don't have to pretend like they're not. You don't have to go look for them, but they're out there. There's lions out there. How do I know? How do I know? Because Daniel, as a young man, and when I say a young man, how old do you think Daniel was when he was taken into captivity? We just said that he was 82, more or less, in his 80s when he faced the lions. Okay? He was actually very young. He was in his early teens. We don't know exactly when, but he was in his early teens. And so what happened was that in the year 596, King Nebuchadnezzar, which someone had dubbed King Nabu. Yeah, King Nabu. Well, anyways, Nebuchadnezzar came and destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. But that was on his second visit. He visited Judah 3 times. He went the first time and said, hey, guys, we can work this out. Look, I'm just going to give you a penalty. I'm going to depose the king that was here, and I'm going to put his cousin, so, it stays in the family, and just bring the money over, and we'll be okay. And he took all the excellent human resources that the Jews had. He took all these young guys and all the young girls, and he took them to train them as slaves in his kingdom to be whatever he wanted them to be. And so imagine when you're, say, 15 years old and you're taken away from your family, and Daniel was of the royal family. They take you away from your palace. They take you away from your family. They take you away from everything you know, and they bring you somewhere else to be someone that they want you to be. Now, I don't know about you, but this wasn't a peaceful process. It wasn't like, hey, guys, I want you to sign this sheet. Everybody line up. Everybody get in the bus. We're going to go to Babylon. Hope you like it. It's beautiful. You're going to love it. Yeah, Isaac, that's not how it goes. I don't know how many of you have experienced exile, but I'm a child of exile. I experienced exile. I was almost 7 years old, and we were literally kicked out of our country. And I remember the day that we left, June 6, 1969. And we spent the whole day at that airport in a little bitty room with glass walls. And at 6 p.m., we were there from 6 in the morning. And at 6 p.m., we couldn't go to the restroom. We couldn't get water. There was nothing to eat. That whole day, just sitting there and watching your family members across a wall of glass crying and waving and whatever they were doing. And we just sat there. And at 6 p.m., they said, okay, the plane's here. You got to get on. And it was soldiers that took everything away from us. I remember that I had a $1 bill, Cuban bill, that my grandfather had given us. And the lady checked. She says, empty your pockets. And I had my little $1 bill. And she says, where you're going, you're not going to need that. Boom. And she took the gift that my grandfather had given me to remember him by. And there were soldiers lined up like every 10 feet all the way to the plane. And they said, okay, you're going to go. If anybody looks back, you're staying. And so my father grabbed us and told my brother and me, whatever you do, whatever happens, don't look back. Just keep on walking and get in on that plane. Now, we were going to freedom. Daniel was going to Babylon, which is a whole different thing. And so I can experience in some ways what Daniel was. And you meet some really mean people. You meet some evil people in the wild. And so how do you deal with people in the wild that are out to hurt you? Well, yeah, number one is do not be afraid. Now, there's something about predators, okay? There's something about predators or animals that have predatorial behaviors. And do you know what? They can smell fear. I mean, literally, they can't smell it, but they can tell when the victims are afraid. They can tell when the victims are afraid. And so what happens is that you become a victim that's defenseless because they already know that you are afraid of them. And when you're dealing with people that are dangerous in the wild, the first thing is don't be afraid of them, because if you're afraid of them, you're toast. They can smell fear. And I've actually experienced that. I've experienced it on both sides. I've experienced it when I've been afraid and then that person eats your lunch. There are bullies out there that just want to hurt you for no other reason than just to get to you. For no other reason than to, one of the things that I always repeat is hurt people hurt people. And a lot of times these bullies are hurt people, and so because they're hurt, they're going to hurt you as well. And so if you are afraid, you're walking into their world on their terms. So the first thing is, do not be afraid. Can you say that? So when you're facing a wild animal, do not be afraid. The second thing is, stay away from them. Okay, now that's easier said than done, because usually when you're in the wild and you meet with a lion, it's not because you had it planned, okay? And so when you get stuck with a bully, it's not because, hey, I'm going to go look for a bully today, okay? It's because they come looking for you. And so what they tell you is, in the wild, when you're dealing with wild animals, don't go looking for them, okay? And so, I mean, if you're in a safari and you're going to walk around the bushes, then you know that you're going to find a lion that's going to maul you. And so what you do is, in life, when you're out there, try to be aware of these people and stay away from them. But what if you can't? Okay? So you've demonstrated that you're unafraid. You are not looking for them, but then they show up. And so what you need to do is know their habits. Know their habits. Like, for instance, I just told you one. Hurt people. And so dangerous people in the wild that come at you is because they've been hurt. And they want to share their pain with you. And so children that are abused end up being abusive. And those are the ones that are bullies in school. Children that grow up in abusive families, those are the ones that end up being husbands and wives that are abusive as well. And so you need to learn to know their habits. You need to learn what time is the best time to deal with them. And so usually a lion in the morning, what are they doing? Sleeping. And so if you're going to go on a safari and you're going to walk around and you're going to take pictures, do it in the morning. The lion's not going to do anything. He's just going to look at you and say it's not worth it. But at night is when they prowl and when they're looking for you. And so I know this sounds like common sense, but geez, know their habits, okay? I mean, it's like, girls that get abused, well, when do they get abused? In the daytime? No, usually at night. Why? Because they go out with some guy and they go to a bar, they meet somebody, and this person decides to be a lion and abuse them. And so then the question is, okay, you didn't know that lions frequent bars? You didn't know that that's what they look for? You went to the watering hole. And so know their weaknesses as well, okay? All animals have weaknesses. And if you know their weaknesses, then what do? Okay, I'll give you a perfect example. It's been demonstrated that bears will not eat dead meat. That's not their preference. And so if you pretend to be dead, now the key is pretend to be dead. But if you can pretend to be dead, the bear will just sniff you and keep on going. Now that's a habit that you know. Now, predators have habits. And so you need to be aware of that. And so a predator is looking for a confrontation. So if you don't confront, then what happens? then there's nothing that can elicit a response from them. Now you say, well, that's easier said than done. And then we go to our next one. Bring a friend or a bigger lion. Okay? And so what happens is that when you're in the wild, if you bring help, it's always going to be better than if you're alone. And so when you are out there, if you're going on a date in a place that you don't know, please take somebody. If you're going to do shopping in an area that you don't, well, please take somebody. If you're going to go to a place where you don't know exactly who the people are, please take somebody. Because when you bring a friend, it helps. And when you're in exile, do you notice that Daniel had friends with him? Do you notice from the very beginning that he was with his other three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do you remember that he made friends because God gave him grace with the guy who was in charge of those young men? And so Daniel made sure that he always had a friend with him. And so this brings us to our second point. And so you have to defend yourself against dangerous lions in the wild, but you also have to defend yourself against dangerous lions at work. Okay? Dangerous lions at work. And Daniel had to deal with that. Now, just so that you get a picture of this, King Nabu, decided that he wanted to make Babylon the greatest city on earth. And so he did the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But then he's also famous for doing the Ishtar Gate. Now, the Ishtar Gate was an amazing gate in the outside defenses of Babylon. And it was, if you want to look it up, go online. They have, in Berlin, they have a mock rendition of this in one of the museums, and it's really impressive. It's this huge gate, but it's decorated with lions. So can you imagine? Daniel gets to Babylon, he goes to the Ishtar gates, and all he sees is lions all around him. And so then he gets to work, and what he finds out is that there are lions in the place where he's supposed to work. And so we find in Daniel 2:24 that the king has a dream. Remember the dream of King Nebuchadnezzar? And so he asked people to tell him what it was. Nobody could, so he's going to kill all the wise men. And so Daniel shows up, and he solves the dream. How do you think the other people felt? Hey, this is great. We got a guy who saved our skins. He made them all look foolish. He made them all look stupid. So all of a sudden, he's working with people that want to bring him down. Do you ever feel like that? Have you ever been in a situation in your job where someone wants to bring you down and you're scratching your head and wondering why? Or maybe you don't even know. And so Daniel and his friends are constantly facing lions at their work. Why did Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego end up in the oven of fire? Because there were envious people. There were envious people. And so Daniel had to deal with lions in the wild when he went into exile, but he had to deal with dangerous lions at work because of envy. Now, envy creates in people some highly undesirable behaviors. And so envy says, if I can take one of my eyes out to take 2 of yours out, then that sounds like a good deal, okay? And envy looks at people and says, if I can get rid of this person, then I can take their spots. It's one step closer to my success. And so you have people that are at your work that want to bring you down. Now, sometimes it's the boss, and that's the worst lion to deal with. How many of you have ever worked for a lousy boss? And a person that wants to hurt you because they don't care about you. I had a boss like that. I was in college, I needed help, and so back then we were doing data transfers. You know, computers had just come out, and businesses were going from literal books to putting all their information on computers. So I was hired to do that. And the boss was a stinker. Oh, my Lord, that man, we'll call him Jack, but I mean, he was a single man, and he was in his 40s, and he had a sports car. He was rich. He had everything, and I guess he had a chip on his shoulder, and he made sure that he would come and tell me, "Get off, Lema. You don't know what you're doing." And I'm going, I'm in college, and you're not. And I made the mistake of saying it. Oh, my Lord. Well, let me tell you about you. And blah, blah, blah. And so then he would come, and nothing that I did was ever right. Now, the good news is half of the time he wasn't at work. God knows what he was doing. But the times that he was at work, we all were miserable. We all were miserable. We were all always walking on eggshells because everything we did, he found fault with. And so finally I said, this lion, I can't handle him. He's hurt me too many times. I'm going to quit. Now, to quit, you have to go talk to the boss. Now, the boss, it was like God. You never saw him. You knew he was there. He had his office. And so then I never met the boss. I go and I said, look, I'm here because I want to resign. The guy goes, you're a good worker. It was an elderly guy, and he had this huge office, and he says, why do you want to quit? You're doing a great job. And I said, well, to be honest with you, the boss that I have, he's really hard to deal. I don't have to put up with this, and it's over. I don't need this. I can find another job that I'll make the same amount of money. And he said, you mean Jack? And I said, yeah. He goes, that's my son. He goes, don't worry about him. We want you here. I'll take care of him. Well, let me tell you, when I left that job, they gave a party for me. We had cake. I got gifts. I got bonuses. What didn't I get? I never had another peep from Mr. Jack because a bigger lion came to my defense. And so how do you deal with dangerous lions at your work? First of all, do not be afraid. Don't be afraid. The temptation and the tendency of all of us is to be afraid. Stay out of their way if possible. I found that from Mr. Jack. Stay out of his way. If you're out of his way, what he can't see can't hurt you, okay? But you have to know their habits. You have to know why they're hurting. You have to know what. Now, one of the things I found out about Mr. Jack is that he couldn't hold a relationship if it was tied around his neck. And so he had social issues, and so it made him uncomfortable. And so then when he worked with us, guess who he took it out on? And so knowing that, we kind of decided to work in different ways. Know their weaknesses. Know why they do what they do. Know, in other words, you have to pay attention to your environment, to the people around them. And this is what we see that Daniel and his friends did. They looked at the people and they maintained their lifestyles. In other words, Daniel didn't change his religion. The other guys didn't change their religion. They maintained their values. They maintained their convictions because they already knew the weaknesses of the other people. And once again, bring a friend or a bigger lion. The minute that I called the boss that I found out was Jack's dad, the world changed for me. And so one of the things that happened to Daniel is that he became friends with King Nebuchadnezzar. And that changed it all for him. Now, what happened when King Nebuchadnezzar died? Then he had other issues, okay? But it was a long while. Daniel enjoyed a long prosperity because he dealt with the dangerous lions at work. And finally, the worst lions that you can meet with, the most dangerous lions that you need to defend against yourself is in your family and in your church. Now, there are predators of first-degree order that are in your family sometimes and in your church. Now, I'm going to be honest and tell you that I've been mauled in a lot of places, but the worst maulings that I've ever had have been in churches. And the problem is that you have expectations, okay? Daniel had to deal with exile. Daniel had to deal with envy. But then he had to deal with the expectations of people. And like in a church, you don't expect people to hurt you. And if you're in your family, you certainly don't expect your father or your mother to be abusive, and you certainly don't expect your brother to be a bully or your sister. You certainly don't expect your uncle to be a sexual predator. you certainly don't expect people in church that come because they love Jesus to hurt you or to do anything to make you feel bad or to try to get a jump on you. And so that is even worse to deal with. And so Daniel had to deal, when he's 80 years old, he has to deal with problems at the highest and the closest circles that he had. And so his friend, the king, could do nothing for him. And so they throw him in there. Daniel, I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to fast. Pray to your God. You know, I mean, come on, really? This is the best you can do? You're the king. How many times we feel like we've been let down by people that they were not who we expected them to be? And so, how do you deal with them? First of all, do not be afraid. Stay out of their way if possible. Know their habits. Know their weaknesses. And bring a friend or a bigger lion. Now, here's something. Who's your bigger lion that you know? You know that the Bible calls Jesus in the book of Revelation the Lion of Judah? Huh? And I don't know if you like reading the books of C.S. Lewis. If you haven't, look him up. But he talks about Jesus in the Chronicles of Narnia as a lion, Aslan. And why? Well, because he is the epitome of the power of the magnificence of a lion. But he's a good lion. And so, how do you want to do your life? Now, I've tried doing life on my own, and guess what? I've got the scars to show it. I've got the scars to show it. There's things that people did to me that have imprinted me in a bad way for a long time. And it's taken God a long time to heal those wounds and to get my life to change. And so, what about you? How do you deal with dangerous lions in the wild? How do you deal with dangerous lions at your work? How do you deal with dangerous lions in your family, in your inner circle, in your church? And so, the best thing you can do is to bring a friend, and that friend's name is Jesus. And so, Paul said that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, then you will be saved. And when you say saved, what it means is that all of a sudden you got a lion coming with you wherever you go. You got a friend who's got your back and got your front as well. And you can deal with dangerous people in your life when you allow Jesus to confront them. Now, how do I know? Because I've experienced it in my life. So I'm going to ask you to lower your head. And if you're watching online, I want you to think about this as well. Lower your head and think, how are you dealing with the lions in your life? How are you dealing with dangerous people that are striving to hurt you? Daniel learned that he could not do it alone. He trusted his God, and his God sent the angels to take care of the dangerous lions. And just like that, God sent his son to be right beside you, to deal with whoever you have to confront, to deal with whoever you have to deal with, so that you can survive, so that you can experience peace, so that you can experience the love that he has for us. And so there, you can pray. You can pray. Just like Paul said, you can confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. And so I'm going to have a prayer, and you can use that prayer as your model. You can repeat it and make it your own. My prayer is not going to do anything for you. It's you before God asking him to do what he promised. Father God, I come before you because there are lions in my life. Lord, I've been hurt by them, and I don't know what to do about them. Lord, I understand that Daniel dealt with his lions by letting you confront the lions for him, by letting you help him and guide him. And so, Lord, we come before you asking to help me confront the lions in my life. I realize that Jesus Christ is the Lion of Judah. He is the Lord of all life. And I confess Jesus as Lord of my life. And I believe in my heart that God resurrected him from the dead. I believe in my heart that Jesus died on the cross for my sin and for the sins of the world so that he could stop the pain, the hurt that causes so many dangerous lions to maul other humans for no reason at all. And so I believe, Lord, I understand that I am a sinner and that without you I can do nothing. And so come into my life. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.